My name's Pippa Murray. I'm the founder of Pip Nut, and we're an all-natural nut butter brand, which I launched just over 2 years ago now. So I first funded Pip Nut through a mixture of different sort of funding options. The first was I went to my friends and family, so I got a small loan from my dad. He gave me £5,000 to kind of help me get to market, and then I also took a small startup loan, which was around £10,000. And I think it's really important in your early stages of looking for money to start up your business is to not take too much too soon, because you've got to kind of figure out what you're doing. And that initial kind of startup loan and loan from my family was really that money that I needed to kind of trial the product at markets at a really small stage and do a little bit of product development. So it really kind of was the first step that I needed to kind of get the business moving. There were quite a number of people that said no when I asked for money. I think particularly when you're early stage, I think it's one of the hardest times to raise finance when you haven't really proved your concept or your business hasn't even started trading. And that was certainly the case with Pip Nut. When I was pre-revenue with the brand, I was doing a fundraise to kind of get the products into production. And I think at that stage you pose the biggest risk to angel investors, and particularly if you've never run a business before, if it's you're a first-time entrepreneur, it was a really challenging time. And in actual fact, the way I got round all those no's, or at least the no's that I saw, was that I found that a lot of people when I was very early stage were willing to give me smaller amounts of money, so 10 or 20 grand, and instead of trying to hold out for that one investor that would give me the full 100 that I was looking for, I instead pulled them all onto Crowdcube, which was an equity crowdfunding site. And that allowed me to kind of get on board the people that I wanted and get the investment in that early stage. And also for them, it de-risked it for, not having to be the only investor putting the money into what perhaps was at the time quite a risky business. I don't think I ever felt like giving up. I think the nature of being an entrepreneur is that you're incredibly determined. You never take no for an answer, and really the no's are always a yes, really. I guess there are times where in a business there are challenges, but almost I think sometimes those moments where you feel slightly out of depth and you're not quite sure how you're going to navigate a certain problem are sometimes the times where you show the best of you. So I think there are definitely trying points in any business, but no time have I completely lost faith and felt like giving up. And I think that's always that thing of like the yes is just around the corner feeling that I've always had with Pip Nut. There are a number of kind of tipping points in the brand that have really helped accelerate the business forwards and I guess gave me more security in the future of the company. So, for instance, one of them was raising our first round of finance on Crowdcube. I think the second, whilst we were trading, was when we first got our sort of first major listing in a national retailer in Sainsbury's. And for me, that was a really significant moment for the brand because it started to take our products into kind of mainstream stores. And also, it's really important for a food brand to be able to sort of show that you can successfully sell in one of those national retailers. And that kind of product launch in that supermarket really validated the business. And the business plan that I had put together was starting to be kind of proven and started to play out at that point. So that was a really important moment for me. The most important thing a startup needs to know when they're sort of raising finance for their business is that it's a long journey with your startup, and actually you can raise different finance at different stages. So for instance, with Pip Nut, I started at my first big piece of funding was from Crowdcube, which was an equity crowdfunding site. And that was perfect because I was pre-revenue at the time. I needed a fairly substantial amount of cash to get the product into production. And I raised about 120k on the site, and it was brilliant because it's quite a quick process. The valuation was pretty good, but also it meant that you also get 80 investors into your kind of pool of investors, all of which are kind of ambassadors for your brand, which is brilliant for that early stage. the advice I'd give a startup that's looking to really scale when it comes to kind of raising different finances, I guess you need to look at perhaps who your investors are. So I did a fundraise and brought on a very experienced angel investor sort of in my sort of second year of trading. And he was a really important person and still is in the business, and actually his experience both in the world that I play in, so FMCG, and his experience of scaling his own businesses, both of which were food and drink brands, have really been valuable to me as a business. So the cash has been important. You know, that was obviously what the deal was based upon. But actually his advice and mentoring and sort of strategic advice that he was giving me was almost just as useful as the cash as well. So I'd really advise looking for industry experts or experienced angels investors to kind of come on board and add value to your business in that sense as well. One of the best bits of advice I've ever had was actually from one of my investors who was talking more about in the context of a buyer's meetings, but I kind of think this is relevant to my business as a whole. But he was saying how it's important to spend more time listening than talking in those meetings. And actually, I think that's something that I've always taken on board in the way that I've run my business. I ask for a lot of advice from lots of different people, and I find I get a lot from people when I sit back and listen to what they have to say. There's lots of different information out there for startups to find out about their finance options. The Business Finance Guide is a great tool that you can use to kind of lay out all the different options that you have in a very simple, easy to understand formats. But as well as that, I think it's always worth speaking to other business owners, you know, finding out how other people have raised money for their companies. There is no one set rule or path for anyone. And in addition to that, I would also highly recommend getting a mentor. I think mentors can play a really great role in helping you kind of talk through all the options that are right for you and for your business specifically.